What is up, YouTube? HPJ here, and I'm here with video number 2 for Starter Deck Destiny Masters from the Speed Duel Circuit. So, for those who don't know, I just previously did a video for Yami Yugi, and his portion of the starter deck. So now we're going to go ahead and move on into the first antagonist of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Master Series. Mr. Maximilian Pegasus, the owner of Industrial Illusions and the wielder of the Millennium Eye. While his strategy is very different from the protagonist itself, he only has 2 archetypes within his, and they consist of Toon monsters and Relinquished. In the I guess you could say the Thousand's Eyes and Relinquished archetype, because they're technically kind of all in one, but that's for a different video with cards that I do not have. Anyway, when we take a look at this starter deck for Pegasus, it definitely consists of both Toons and cards to support the summon of his boss monster, Relinquished, known in the OCG as Sacrifice. Now, the card that they gave in the starter deck to fit for Pegasus was Mimic Cat. And I believe, was this the first time Mimic Cat got printed? I believe so. No, it wasn't, because I just thought about it. There was the first of the Legendary Duelist packs, and I believe Pegasus was in either the first one or the second one, and there were Toon support there. So Mimic Cat was definitely in that wave. What Mimic Cat does is that it's a normal spell that says if you control a Toon world and a Toon monster, you can target one card in your opponent's graveyard. If it's a monster, you special summon it to your field. Or if it's a spell or trap, you set it on your field. You only activate 1 Mimic Cat per turn. This is basically supposed to be the same card that Pegasus used in his duel against Yugi and Kaiba to basically steal cards from them and turn it on their own. Against his duel with Kaiba, he took Crush Card Virus and infected one of, I think, his Dragon Piper with it, so that Kaiba would lose more than half of his deck and have to really rely on things. While with his duel against Yugi, he took Yugi Summon Skull and turned it into Toon Summon Skull. So talk about, taking someone of a mighty force and turning it into a Toon monster, huh? Yeah, that's how crazy Pegasus was. So, with that in tow, we're actually going to now take a full look at the Pegasus portion of the starter deck. So, for starter deck Pegasus, you'll see, of course, just like Yugi's, the cards that will be listed in the deck of their own on the back. And he is also another duelist that has a ton of normal monsters. So starting off is 1 copy of Rogue Doll with 2 copies of Toon Alligator. Then 1 copy of Parrot Dragon and 1 copy of Dark Rabbit. Hold on, let me move these in position because the Yugi video definitely has some issues there, so I do apologize. Alright, now that those guys are settled in, let's go through the effect monsters. 2 copies of Toon Masked Sorcerer, 1 copy of Toon Mermaid, 1 copy of Toon Summon Skull, and the last monster of it is Relinquished, known in the OCG as Sacrifice. Alright, so moving on from there, we're now going to go into the spell cards. And they start off with Black Illusion Ritual. I said Dark Eyes Illusion Ritual. No, Black Illusion Ritual. 1 copy of Toon Table of Contents. 1 copy of Toon Rollback. 2 copies of Toon World. 1 copy of Yami. 1 copy of Sword of the Deep Seated. So, that is it for all the spells. Then, for the trap cards, we have 1 copy of Toon Defense, with 1 copy of Jar of Greed, and 1 copy of Wild Tornado. All of these cards, of course, were featured for the trap card lineup. And then, going on into the skills, we have it's a Toon World. Then we have Mind Scan. And then Millennium Eye. So those are the 3 cards that were given to Pegasus to fit in for his strategy in his deck. So, like I said earlier, this is a combination of both Toons and Relinquished. I keep calling him Sacrifice because that's his OCG name. Now, the overall gimmick of it is that he uses these monsters to get to his Toons. And then once he has his Toons on the field, you start welling at your opponent for direct damage. Now I'm going to go through the normal monsters first because they're going to get a bit of love here. The one copy of Rogue Doll, I guess just because they didn't want to fit in too many high defensive monsters to play around with the deck. And mind you, there's 2 Rogue Dolls in Yugi's deck. This is what I mentioned when I said there were multiple copies of things that you could switch in and out throughout the deck. And funny enough, Rogue Doll was definitely one of them because there's now 3 copies you can easily play with. Rogue Doll herself is just a light attribute spellcaster with 1600 attack and 1000 defense. Just a standard basis normal monster. Then from there we have 2 copies of the first Toon monster we can actually take a look at, and that's Toon Alligator. While not having the effects like the previous Toon monsters in the game, where it can attack directly and do all those other shenanigans, this is basically just a reference to Toons. As Toon Alligator says on its card text, an alligator monster thought from the cartoons. This monster in shape and design is just basically supposed to be, a play on the cartoon alligator that has a giant axe in his hand. But very high defense with very low stats to just play a wall if needed. Parrot Dragon. This was an iconic monster used in the game. Used in the show by Pegasus. It only made its appearance once, but what an impact. I remember people were actually looking for this card because it was a target for Heretic Dragon Ruler, in which they were trying to find monsters to help pay off as, normal wind monster, a normal wind dragon that you can focus on for some of the heretics, and then combine that with Tempest the Dragon Ruler Storms. So it also was a level 5. I don't know, there was a couple of heretic monsters that were level 5. So you at least got to play around with that scenario of things. But also just the fact that it was a good monster to just play into. Dark Rabbit. Now in terms of the last of the monsters that were featured from Pegasus, this and Parrot Dragon, while they look very cartoonish, are actually not Toon monsters at all. They were actually brung up, but it was just like, alright. Yeah, they're things. And will they ever get support later on? They weren't even that relevant enough to even stay that long in the game. They were literally just dropped out the next match Pegasus played for literally just a whole bunch of Toons, non-Toon monsters to play around with, and really just to screw over Yugi, which he thought he was. Then we're going to move on from there and now talk about actual Toon monsters. Toon Masked Sorcerer. This is a Toon version of the actual monster known as Masked Sorcerer. While the Toon monsters can attack the turn they are summoned, they also have a major Achilles heel that if Toon World is on the field and it leaves the field, the Toon monsters themselves leave the field. So that is one thing that was always strange from the original card, from the main card game itself, where Toon monsters need Toon World to exist. Funny enough, not these. There were a class of Toon monsters that were called the A-Class. And the A-Class Toons were basically Toon monsters who did not need Toon World to be normal or special summon. They can easily just do that on their own. And in conjunction with that, the abilities that they carried on were of remnants to the monsters who were previously before them, or just giving new effects just to say, let's play around with them. Toon Masked Sorcerer was one of them. As this monster, when it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you get to draw a card, just like the original Masked Sorcerer does that through its own effects. Then we have Toon Mermaid. She was one of the original of the Toon archetype. And basically, she carries all the OG. This is what you would consider the C class of the Toon monsters. Her basic stats were just enough to put her into the deck. But for overall, what she does is that she has to pay 500 life points for her to attack. Just like many other Toons, you can attack your opponent directly if they control no Toon World. If Toon World leaves the field, she is also destroyed. So you have to really rely on Toon World to be in play. Other than that, she's just an aqua Toon monster that's just there to look pretty, and she's actually the Toon variant of the Red Archery Girl, a card that was actually used by Pegasus himself. Then we have Toon Summon Skull, the monster who's the cover of the pack here for Pegasus. Level 6 Dark Attribute Fiend type monster with 2500 attack and 1200 defense. This, of course, is a monster who resembles Yugi's Summon Skull. They even have to make the clear point that this card is an Archfiend card, which was an update to the Archfiend monsters that were not given their Archfiend status in the TCG. Now, for further input to it, this is the highest the second of the highest stated OG Toon monsters, because Blue Eyes White Dragon did get a Toon monster itself, known as Blue Eyes Toon Dragon. There was also Manga Rearan, but Manga Rearan didn't have as much attack as Toon Summon Skull. And to be very fair, most people did not play Manga Rearan. They were either playing Summon Skull for the free tribute, or they were playing your boy Blue Eyes White Dragon, because 3K body. Now, in conjunction to that, the last monster that we're going to be looking at is Relinquished. Of course, the ace monster of Pegasus. And while it's a hidden ace monster too, because you have to remember, Pegasus only dropped Relinquished in the eyes of cards against Yugi when he was backed into a corner, then forcing him into a shadow game to basically go into a rage and then use all of his hatred to create a monster like this. This is something that he also stated in the game, that he made a small amount of cards for himself. Toons was his own, as well as, the Thousand Eyes in the the Relinquished archetype. Like he's saying sacrifice, but that's an OCG name. Now, the thing about this ritual monster is that it can be such a summon with the Black Illusion ritual spell. You can, once a turn, take one of your opponent's monsters and equip it to this monster. The monster's attack and defense are given to Relinquished, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, become equal to the same as the equipped monster. So if the monster is face down, it's just 0/0. Now, the other thing about it is that if this card was equipped with a monster and was to be destroyed by battle, you destroyed the equipped card instead. And any battle damage you would have taken from the battle involved, this card inflicts equal amount of effect damage to your opponent. So if you take damage, your opponent is taking damage. So it was it was kind of one of the niche things then too, because at the time it was released, this was the first time a ritual monster had an effect and not just a basic ritual summon. Like, you need this particular card and this amount of stars with this particular spell card to then special summon this monster. So it's a very big move at that point. Now, in just in terms of the array of monsters here, not too bad. You have every bit of aspect of Pegasus that people love, where he was running his zany kooky monsters, he was running his Toons, and if you piss them off, here comes Relinquished. Now, we move on into the spells. And, of course, this would not be a deck without the Black Illusion Ritual to go help you summon your Relinquished. Then we have all these zany Toon cards. Toon Table of Contents to search for any monster with Toon. Do note, Mega Rearan can be searched by this card because it does have on its text now that it says this is a Toon card. So it's one less thing you have to write on Toon Table of Contents. But one more thing you have to write on Mega Rearan. Toon Rollback to basically allow one of your Toon monsters to attack twice during the battle phase, which could easily win you the game with a easy play with Toon Summon Skull. Activate Toon Rollback and then not have to worry about things. Toon World, and while we're going to talk about the skill card, it's a Toon World. Basically, these are all Toon World. This card is treated as Toon World and is a continuous spell, so the ability just basically places it on the board. While Toon World itself says you pay 1,000 of your life points, and basically while it's on the field, all the effects of your Toon monsters go off. They can be summoned to the field without a summon. For the special summon. They can attack directly as long as your opponent doesn't have any Toon monsters. And basically you can easily just try to win the game as fast as you can with your Toons. Now, the other cards that they added into this were Yami, I guess, because Relinquished being dark, being a spellcaster, Summon Skull being the fiend, and your other array of, your Rogue Doll and your two Mass Sorcerers. I would have figured this would have been something they gave Yugi, which they did in forms of a skill, but I guess they thought it was way too broken of an actual field spell, which is not that broken, to then give it to Pegasus. So, alright, and then Sword of the Deep said it, I guess, just to say, here, we're gonna just throw you a bone or something to be nice with. So, alright, that's it for all of the spells. And then moving into all of the traps, which are only 3. Toon Defense. This is basically just to, play around with your Toon monsters so that they don't get destroyed. Probably because you'll have to wait for Toon World, or if you didn't draw in the Toon World, then you can't do your Toon shenanigans. But it's a pretty decent enough Toon card. Then we have Jar of Greed, just for a bit of draw power. And then we have Wild Tornado, which I thought was very odd itself, because most cards in these decks don't destroy anything. Well, in these three. The other ones, yes. But I guess it's just the way to pry out to not put in MST, because maybe MST would have just been too broken. Then now we go into the, what is it that we're going to now? Oh, the skills. So, Mind Scan. The skill says that, I'm sorry, well, we've already talked about, yeah, we talked about it's a Toon world. But Mind Scan, this card says that at the start of your third turn, if your life points are 3k or higher, you may activate this skill during which counts for both players' turns. You can look at your opponent's hand, set cards on the spell and trap card zone, and if your life points drop below, drop below 3k, you flip this card over. Basically, it's just a peek at the cards your opponent has. That's really all it is. And then Millennium Eye does the same thing. At the start of the turn, you can reveal, your opponent reveals their opening hand. You may choose if they keep that hand or shuffle it back into the deck. What is the drawback to it? Your opponent can also look at your hand and then send it back as well. But once the skill is used, that is it, and you flip this card over. It's pretty much just mimicking the things that Pegasus did in his duels with Yugi and Kaiba, where he was able to see the cards. Oh, and Keith too, when he was asked to duel Bandit Keith. I know, yeah, Bandit Keith, right? Yeah, I remember that guy too. But for the most part, this is basically everything for Pegasus, the owner of the Millennium Eye, and of course the owner of Industrial Illusions, which is said to be the ones who make the cards in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters franchise. Now, if my overall aspects of it, it's a good way to get, fans of Pegasus into this. And it has a pretty decent lineup of things too, especially because it includes Toons, Relinquished, and give you some setups there. So with that said, let me know in the comment section, what do you think about Pegasus' portion of Destiny Masters? Do you like the Toons that are included? Do you think some of the normal monsters were included were some good choices? What do you think of just the overall lineup? What is your favorite Toon? What is your favorite lineup of things from the Toon archetype? What do you like about, Relinquished being in here? And what is your favorite Relinquished slash Eyes card? So yeah, let me know all that in the comment section below. And with that said, you guys, I want to wrap up Destiny Masters with my last video, and then we'll work on the next 3 after that. So with that said and done, thanks everyone for watching. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, as it helps out tremendously. You can hit the notification bell to be informed of when I upload more content to the channel. Socials are in the description box below. And with that said and done, do check out the playlist as well for older content. Thanks everyone for watching. HPJ signing out. Take care.